Was that last exercise challenging for you? If it was, don't worry. A lot of these rules are tricky, even for people who study language very closely. But here's a few other examples of sentences that would work. You don't need a comma if the dependent clause comes at the end of the sentence. There's the dependent clause, right? No comma here. Or, here's that dependent clause at the beginning of the sentence, and you see there's the comma. Here's the logical connector. See the semicolon there. There's another example of that here. All right. If you feel like this, that's okay. Feel free to go back, check your answers to that last task, and if these examples help clarify, to make some changes. Otherwise, I'd like to move on to logical connectors and meaning, right? Not just grammar, but what these words actually mean. Students feel compelled to use logical connectors in writing, but we often struggle to choose the right connector. Is it nevertheless or however? And this is partly because we don't use these words in everyday speech, and they can feel a little unfamiliar. But there's other reasons for the problem. One problem is that instructors or writing textbooks or guides or whatever often tell us just to use these words without really explaining how to do it. All right, and take a look at an example here. This is from one of the best-selling academic writing books on the market, and this is the approach. It's like, oh, well, transition words and phrases, like these. However, nevertheless, like use these transition phrases. But what's the difference between however and nevertheless? Are they the same thing? They're in the same box. Here we see however, in contrast, and on the other hand, all in the same box. And it's kind of like, just pick one, right? Rock music is primarily the music of white performers. However, in contrast, on the other hand, jazz is performed by both white and black musicians. It's like, just pick one. But I mean, they can't really all mean the same thing, can they? I mean, if they're all the same, wouldn't we only need one? And I'm not cherry picking here. Here's one of the other best-selling writing guides out there. It's called "They Say, I Say," and it's kind of the same thing. It's like, oh, if you're giving a contrast, just use one of these words. Nevertheless, or on the other hand, or although, or whatever. Same question though. This it's not like is it really just a grab bag where it doesn't matter which one you choose? So you might at this point go to a dictionary and think, okay, well maybe the dictionary will help me, here. But you can see here's an example of a dictionary that says however means nevertheless, and here's dictionary dictionary.com here. So let's see what dictionary.com says. However means nevertheless or yet. Oh, okay, or it means on the other hand. Oh, it does. Well, what does nevertheless mean then? Nevertheless means however. Huh? And it just goes on like this. You're just kind of in this never-ending death loop. So, clearly we can't just rely on dictionaries or our instructors to get meaningful information about these words, and often we're just not familiar with them from our own lives. So what do? We do research. All right, that's what Howard Williams, he's one of the top linguists at Columbia University. He set out to do this by traveling around the country, and just collecting data on how people actually use these words and how they don't. All right, and if you look at enough examples of usage over enough time, patterns start to emerge, and we see actual pretty clear linguistic frameworks in which we use different words. Math majors might like this section. Let's take a look at one of them here. Moreover and furthermore, words that are very close in meaning. People do say things like this. WordPress allows bloggers to change things quickly. It offers plugins to suit every purpose. Moreover, WordPress sites come up frequently on Google searches. They also say things like this. Emerald's stories were poorly written. He misrepresented source material. Furthermore, he was often late to meetings. They don't say this, though. I like WordPress. Furthermore, I like Tumblr. That's a little weird, right? Well, and here's the thing. If you look at enough examples of moreover and furthermore, it doesn't mean and, right? We could say things like, I ate rice and I had some beans, but we don't say I had rice, furthermore I had beans, okay? We use it in very precise circumstances. We've introduced a couple reasons to support a conclusion, and we're getting ready to give the third or fourth reason. We're always building towards some kind of conclusion. Take a look at all these ideas. We've got idea 1 about WordPress, idea 2 about WordPress, and then we're introducing idea 3 about WordPress. And all of these ideas build to a natural conclusion. WordPress is good, all right? And we get the same thing here. Idea 1, 2, and then furthermore 3 about Emerald, building towards the conclusion that Emerald was bad, all right? Pardon the blunt language. Let's now look at another, here's a framework that we can kind of use to remember this though, all right? Keep these in mind. Concessives. Now we're talking about things like even though, although, or while, all right? How do we use these things? Well, this is what people tend to say. Even though it was my first time blogging, I had no trouble creating a post. Although most political blogs claim to be impartial, few are in reality. While Tim has written a few popular posts, he's yet to earn any money as a blogger. These are things that people say. What they don't tend to say is stuff like this. Although Flickr is devoted to photography, Pinterest focuses on e-commerce. All right, well, why not? Why do we get statements like this? And why do we tend really not to see statements like this? The reason is that although or even though is not the same thing as but, right? We wouldn't say things like I like beans, although I don't like rice. And that's just a little weird, right? All right, well, how do we use it? This is the case. There's some sort of X, and X is true. And we admit that, or we concede that. And that's why we call these things concessives. But what's more important is why, which is also true. So take a look at this. I mean, here's your X. It was my first time blogging. That's true. And I admit that. But what I really want to say to you is that I had no trouble creating a post. All right. Yeah, it's true that most political blogs claim to be impartial, but what my real point here is that few of them are. All right. Yeah, I know Tim wrote a few popular posts. I know that, but what really is important is that he's yet to earn any money. That's the point I'm trying to stress here. And so in that sense, these concessives, they act as a little bit of a weight. You place it on the clause and it kind of sinks it in importance a little bit while admitting that it's true. That's why this doesn't make sense. All right. Well, we've got, an X, Flickr, and our comment about it, and we got a Y, Pinterest. But they're of equal importance, right? That's why this sounds a little bit strange. If I say things like, like I'm tall, my sister's short, those are of equal importance, right? And so that's why it sounds strange to say things like I am tall, although my sister is short, So here's a frame you can remember. Little x, big Y, right? Here, the big Y shows that it's bigger in terms of importance, all right? Let's take a look at another one here. Nevertheless, people do say things like this. Chen's posts have always incited discussion. Nevertheless, his recent piece on climate change has yet to receive a single comment. The entire city was without internet access. Nevertheless, Tomoko found a way to get online and update her site. People don't say stuff like this. John wanted to start a blog. Nevertheless, he did not know how. Does that feel a little weird to you? Well, it kind of is. If you look at a lot of examples of usage of nevertheless, here's the frame that results. There's an X, and it implies Y. And X is true, but Y is not true. So look at the example. All right, Chen's posts have always incited discussion. So now he's got a new post. What would you expect? Well, if the posts have always incited discussion, you would expect that the new post would incite discussion as well. But the opposite has happened. Not a single comment. All right, here's another example. If the entire city is without internet access, you would expect that Tomoko is not going to be able to get online. But the opposite happened. She did get online, If it rains all day in the park, you'd expect people to go home. But nevertheless, they stayed and played, all right? That's kind of like a surprising, unexpected outcome, all right? Keep that in mind in addition to this frame that we see here, all right? When we look at this one and we feel that it's kind of weird, well, it's because wanting to do something doesn't imply that you're going to know how to do it, right? Or, if I say like, I'm tall, nevertheless my sister's short. Well, just the fact that I'm tall doesn't necessarily imply that my sister should be as well, does it? Take a look at another one. In contrast, here's some things that people tend to say. Tumblr employs a system of keyword tags. In contrast, Instagram relies on geotags or hashtags. WordPress is all about content creation, sharing your ideas and feelings. In contrast, Tumblr is more of a content curation site, a place to collect the works of others. The average Pinterest user is a 42-year-old female. In contrast, Flickr users tend to be male and in their late 20s or early 30s. All right, people don't say stuff like this. John wanted to start a blog. In contrast, he did not know how. Well, okay, why is this a little out of place? Why is this weird? If you look at the examples, we see that we've got an X and a Y. In other words, we have two different topics, and they're different in at least one way. Take a look. Here's our X, and here's our Y. All right, we got a difference. Tumblr, X, keyword tags. Instagram, Y, geotags or hashtags. All right, WordPress, X, is about content creation. Tumblr, Y, is about content curation. All right, X, Pinterest user, and then your Y, that's a 40-year-old female, all right? Your comment about X. And you got Y, Flickr, and then this, young males, all right? Well, why does this not work? There's only one subject, and that's John. Let's look at one more tricky connector, and then we'll get on to some good news, all right? On the other hand, one of the most frequently misused connectors out there, all right? Here's some examples of natural usage that are demonstrated through survey data. A blog can help you get your message out. On the other hand, it offers internet trolls a platform to attack you personally. Google Analytics offers a clear view of how visitors interact with your blog. On the other hand, it offers limited options for creating custom reports and requires constant training. All right, note that here it's necessary to only have one subject, and usually we have good and bad qualities of it. So here's your framework, XA, XB. Look at this example. We've only got one subject here, blogs, it. And we've got a kind of a good thing. You can get the message out, and we've got a bad thing. You can get attacked, all right? Here's our topic, Google Analytics. We've got a good thing, clear view of what visitors do, but then a bad thing. There's some limitations, and it requires constant training, all right? Once again, the framework can be pretty helpful there, XA, XB. Here's the good news. Anytime you're not sure what to do, you've got your good old friend, however. All right, it works in contexts like this. Flickr is devoted to photography. However, Pinterest focuses on e-commerce. Sure. John wanted to start a blog. However, he did not know how. The meaning is very broad here. We've got an X and a Y, and they're just different in some ways. And a way to think about however is it's kind of like a sophisticated version of the word but, right? Like I like rice. However, I don't like beans. Okay, right? In many ways, however is to beverage as drink as but is to drink, all right? It's kind of like, the difference between but and however is kind of like the difference between beverage and drink. It's just kind of a more impersonal thing to say. It's used so flexibly that we even can do it for topic change. Much can be said about the role of blogging and customer outreach. However, let us now turn to another topic. Here's my key point. You can't rely on your intuition. You can't rely on instructors, not even dictionaries or writing guides, to use logical connectors correctly. What's better is to learn their frames. You try to remember the frame. If you can picture the frame in your head, it'll help you know what connector to use at what time.